With all the success you've had, do you still face, are you currently facing any fears, or are there fears about the horizon?
Man, I have to give you amazing props. You're such a curious person about the people that you talk to. I love it. I love it,
Thank
man.
you.
The answer is, thank you. Are you kidding me? I've been on a ton of podcasts and people just same questions.
Welcome to the Idea Climbing Radio Show. Today we're going to talk about something that I love to talk about: how to get to your big idea faster by staying in your lane. So many people don't do that. And my guest is Roderick Jefferson. He's a senior executive with over 25 years of experience in sales enablement leadership. He's also an acknowledged practitioner and global keynote speaker. He understands how to create bridges between internal organizations to empower sales to exceed expectations. Roderick frequently presents at industry events and is the author of the Amazon #1 new release and best-selling book, Sales Enablement 3.0, The Blueprint to Sales Enablement Excellence. He is a founding member of the Sales Enablement Society, amongst other things. With all that going on, thank you for taking the time to be here, Roderick. I appreciate it.
Hey, Mark, thanks for having me on, man. I have been excited and ready for this one.
And we're going to be talking, like I said, about staying in your lane, which is something not enough people do. Before we get into the tips, the tricks, the strategies, all that good stuff, when it comes to staying in your lane, how did you learn that? What's your story with getting good at staying in your lane?
I'll go with trial and error. I've learned how to and how not to both ways, right? And my mom used to always say, no matter what, you still learn, whether it's how to or how not to. And I think over my career and with age and wisdom, I've realized what works for me, what doesn't, what I enjoy, and where I should stay out of the way, right? And to your point, I think a lot of people are trying to, nudge it or fudge it to make it work for them. I think, you know what, life's too short to try and force things. If it's not there, then it's not supposed to be there. It's as simple as that.
Why do you think it is that most people don't stay in their lane, or don't even pick a lane in the first place? It happens so often.
I think there's a couple of reasons. One, I think that people don't know what their lane is, so they're just kind of willy-nilly being blown around. And then the second is a lot of people have, and I know it's going to be hard to believe, control issues. So they're trying to micromanage every piece of life. And when they realize that, as it has been said, life is lifing, you figure out how to go. I'm not saying you should not drive your career, drive your life, but at some point, you cannot try and micromanage and control every component of life.
What do you think? Where do control issues come from?
I think it's a couple of things. One, and I'll go personally. When I went through this in my career, it was my very first time getting a VP title. And I started doing things that I thought a VP was supposed to do, or I started emulating some really bad VPs that I had previously, as opposed to just doing and treating people the way that I treated them and the way I operated to get there. Suddenly I felt like I've got to put this mask on, and now I've got the VP, right? And instead of just saying, hey, this is the guy that I am, the guy that I've been, I turned into something that I didn't like. And unfortunately, neither did my team. And so I always say publicly to them, even later, my sincere apologies. And unfortunately, I had to learn at their expense.
How did you learn to get comfortable in your own skin? I mean, it sounds like that's, if I'm on point, it sounds like that's what you're saying, is that you tried to be something because you thought you should be that instead of just being yourself. How do you get comfortable in your own skin?
I got terminated. And it really gave me some time. It wasn't because of that. I think that was a component of it, in all seriousness. What happened was I was laid off, and I had some time to think about accountability and ownership. What would I do differently if I went in today versus when I went in back then? And it came down to a simple thing, and that is treat people the way you want to be treated. And you've got to figure out how to always tie IQ with EQ. And all too many times, leaders are very good at the IQ piece, but we tend to kind of skate over the EQ piece. And at the end of the day, that's really what matters is people. And especially in my line of business as an enablement leader, we're in this business because we're people. And somehow along the way, I lost that and truly believe it's come back, and I've found it because it's paramount to me now.
What advice do you have for people watching or listening that realize, maybe I am putting on some kind of facade? What advice do you have for at least starting to get comfortable in your own skin and just be yourself?
Oh, again, I think there's a few things. One is get yourself a good mentor that's going to tell you good, bad, and ugly, not just what you want to hear. And I wouldn't even say a mentor, but a board of directors around you. I call them my tribe, right? You can never be too high and you can never be too low because they're there to help balance you out. The second piece is before you go into that role, talk to other people that are doing it and learn from people like myself and others that have been there before and ask the hard questions. Where did you not do as well as you wanted to, or where did you screw up? Everybody wants to ask, how do you be the best of? No. You become the best because you realize that you don't have to step into that hole and break your ankle. Learn from somebody else that's done it. And then the third thing is, remember, these are not titles. These are not positions. These are people. They've got real life going on. There's things that happen outside of the walls of wherever you work. So remember, you're dealing with people. You're not dealing with a program manager or a project manager or a senior director or a CEO. You're dealing with somebody that's really dealing with real life problems and issues every single day. Don't become an extra one of those issues.
I'd love to talk about two things, starting with one, because it's a little bit easier to find as far as whether it's a solopreneur or an entrepreneur, let's say. You mentioned mentors, and that's something I'm extremely passionate about. I know it's so important to have at least one. How do you even go? How did you, and what advice do you have for people for approaching someone to even start a relationship like that?
I'm going to take one step back on that. And I want to give a definition in clarity first. There is a difference between mentors and sponsors. So let's start there. Mentors are people that you choose because you see something in them or you admire something about them. Now, a mentor can get you in front of the line. They can get your resume in front of the right people. They can open up doors and create partnerships for you if you're an entrepreneur, right? A sponsor chooses you. You don't get to choose that person. They choose you because they see something either part of themselves or even better than I was at that time. Or in my case, as he told me, and she told you, I've got a couple different, and she told me specifically, it's because there's some rough edges that I think I could smooth off. And I think you'll be a really good executive, but we just got to kind of hit some of those soft spots and blind spots. So once you figure that out, if you're looking for a mentor, now to answer your question, don't go with the first person that says yes. Right? Just because they said yes doesn't mean that it's the right person for you. If it's someone that has a corporate a corporate experience background, and you're an entrepreneur, how are they going to help you? Or vice versa. If they've only worked with small companies and the either solo or partnership ecosystem of being a founder, what do they know about corporate? So find yourself somewhere between them or a couple of different people that can give you a balance and a different insight and different set of lenses.
So what does that approach look like? Let's say you found somebody, okay, you've worked with entrepreneurs or you built your own business, so you qualified that it could be a good mentor. How do you approach them?
Humbly, first of all. And don't ask for a ton of things without you being able to give something back. Even if they say there's nothing that you can give, I've always taken the approach of give to give when I go looking for a mentor. How can I help you and what can I add that's going to enhance your life and or your business? So I'll reach out to someone and say, hey, you know what? I saw a post you put up or I saw a YouTube video. Really loved, and be specific. I really loved how you talked about fill in the blank. Now they know you've done some homework and you're not just coming blindly and asking, right? The other piece is early as possible in the conversation, say, I'm not asking anything of you other than I want to run something past you and find out if this actually makes sense if you've got time. Don't ever send, hey, I'd like you to be my mentor. No. That is something that comes from a relationship, right? And you'll know as you start to talk and you'll feel whether or not it's the right fit. And they'll let you know too, whether it's body language, whether it's not responding to you, whatever it is. You can't force it, as I said earlier. And then once you do get that door open, make sure that you're always doing something, even if it's, I can teach you something new, fill in the blank, but you've got to have a give back. And I didn't say a give to get, but a give back, because I was always taught that you can't move forward, not unless, but until you give back.
So on the bigger picture now, that's the mentor you mentioned. I love that you mentioned it. Can you explain? Because board of directors, I would imagine, could be formal, it could be informal. There's so many avenues you could take. What did you mean when you said have your own board of directors?
I mean, have a circle of tribe that has done different things than you, now that they bring a different set of lenses, right? And they may not actually be, if let's say you're a founder, it may not be someone that's founded or that has been acquired a ton of times. You want a small bit of that. It's like building a gumbo, Mark, right? You want a bunch of different ingredients, and you go, wait a minute, not quite. I'm missing something. I'm missing a little salt. I need a little more cayenne. And why I say that is because sometimes the people on your board of directors may not even be at your level. They may be individual contributors. They may be someone that you would hire, but perfect example. When I'm going out and I'm going to do a keynote to a college or university, I'll grab my son and his friends. They're all in their mid-20s. And I say, is this tool still useful? Is this the thing I should be talking about? Am I going to sound like, I'm still talking about MySpace out there? You know what I mean? Or how is IG being used now? How could TikTok be used differently? The videos that I have out, does that now speak and resonate to your age, or is it just the older folks like me? And so I get a chance to bounce things off, and then I move up the ladder, or sometimes I move down the ladder.
And I love, it sounds like, if I hear it, tell me if I'm on point. A starting point is actually the mentor of the board of directors, build some kind of a support system, and now getting into staying in your lane. How do you start to pick a lane? I mean, is it an age thing? Is it an experience thing? Where does it start?
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that again for me, Mark?
Yeah. When it comes to staying in your lane, as far as picking a lane and saying, I'm going to own this, the path of a career or the trajectory of my business, how do you start to pick a lane? Because people tend to go in like 10 different directions, both corporate America and entrepreneurship, when they're getting started.
Great question. Here's what I did when I was moving out of corporate into becoming a founder. I've got a whiteboard right here in front of me. I put it into 3 columns. What am I really, really good at? What do I absolutely love doing? And then the 3rd column is, what is a need in the market that people will pay for? And then as you go through these lists, and it's not quite a pros and cons, it's literally a list that will jump off the board at you and go, haha. And that's literally how I came up with the service offerings for my company. And thus, as you say, that became my lane, because I had the experience and the expertise, but I also had the passion, and there's also a need in the market. Because if that 3rd piece doesn't happen, you don't have a business. You just have a really expensive hobby.
In your case, how did you, and I love this because I'm really big on passion and purpose first, and then figuring the rest out, figuring out the market need. In your case, what was your passion, and how did you connect that to the business world, and actually with the goal of actually being profitable, connecting passion to that?
Absolutely. So my passion has always been teaching, and that's why I do enablement, right? And so I said, that's great that I can teach, but who needs it? Now I've got to figure out my ideal client profile, my avatar. Well, I had done enough in large companies to know that's not where I wanted to play. And then in all the research and the conversations that I'm having with my network, it was that mid-sized company. Okay, what's mid-size meant? In my mind, it meant between 10 and 100 million, right? Because above that, you've already got a me in-house. The other piece was, I didn't want to go somewhere where I was kind of locked in. I wanted to do it on a fractional basis, because they needed the experience and the expertise, and it could be 3-6 months, right? And also, I knew that from a service offering perspective, how long it would take to put these things in place, how long it would take for it to show an ROI, and how long it would take to really validate the metrics, because I had done it for 25 years. So what I said was, take me out of corporate and put me now as a founder helping these companies. Perfect example. One of the clients I was working with, they had no enablement at all. I wrote the job descriptions. I helped them interview. Then I helped them build out the entire programmatical approach to enablement, right? And it's not training, but we're talking about true productivity and metrics and revenue-based activities. So that's one. Another was they had an enablement team, but they needed to up level. I said, okay, great. Let's do an assessment, figure out where the soft spots are, and then I can help you to fill those out or bring the right individuals. The third piece was, I have a strong partner ecosystem where you need this from me, but what about your partner side? What about your marketing side? I've got folks that can come in that we've already worked together. So you don't have to worry about, like Jenga, all of the places fitting together, right? We literally puzzle with each other. So at the end of the day, it was really about how could we help life be easier for the stakeholder, but at the same time, how could we do this in a time efficient coverage area? And then say, not only we're going to show you how to do it, we're going to be there to grow as you grow, and we're going to put the metrics in to validate the ROI that you're putting in place for the investment that you're making. It's hard to say no to that.
I love that. I really want to learn more about this. You mentioned partner ecosystem, which means whether inherently, and tell me if I'm on point with this, inherently or accidentally, or intentionally or accidentally, you're not a lone wolf. You're not trying to be the end all be all solve all. How do you talk more about what a partner ecosystem is and how did you build yours?
Yeah. And notice I didn't say I have partners, because I've seen all too many times, especially when you're a solopreneur or you're a new founder, people say, hey, let's sign partnership agreements and referral agreements. That's not a whole lot other than useless paper until you really have something viable. The reason I say partner ecosystem is I have literally 3 categories. One is strategic partners. Another is partners that only do training and coaching. And then the third category are sales recruiters, sales recruiting companies. Because why? It's symbiotic. If they're hiring people for their sales, guess what? They need people to enable. As I'm enabling, I'm now talking to leaders, so I know when they're moving around. I know when a lot of the sales folks are looking to move and change. So we literally, once again, we connect like a puzzle. And then you also don't get that, one trick pony, as we used to say, right? You're not just there to do one piece. You now become woven into the fabric of that company. And it comes down to trust. And I'll say it again, it comes down to trust, Mark, because if they don't trust you, they're not going to talk to you. If they don't talk to you, they're not going to buy from you. So show them what you're doing to make them bigger, faster, and stronger. And with case studies and testimonials where you've done it before. So they're not hoping, and you know how I feel about hope. I'll talk about that one in a second, right? They're not hoping that you're going to make this work on their dime, because to me, I think hope is not a strategy.
Oh, that's just throwing something against the wall and using the word hoping for the best. And then you mentioned trust is one thing. What criteria do you have for, as you're building these partner relationships in the ecosystem? What kind of criteria should people have for picking partners in the first place, so you know who to build a relationship with? Because that takes time. There's an ROI there.
It does. It does. And so that's where you really have to believe and trust in your board of directors, for one, and also for your extended network. LinkedIn's great, but I'm also in a number of different organizations. So I know who's really good. Who are you working with on this piece? Did you work with this piece? And how did that project go? Come on now, wink, wink, tell me the truth. And so once that happens, then you start to get a feel. And after doing it time and time again, you go, all right, if I'm looking for someone to help with this piece, I know who I'm going to. if I need them over here, and I know how long it's going to take. Now, then what the key is the interpersonal piece. These are someone that I've got to be on the same trajectory and the same page morally, because when they come in, they're coming in under my company's brand. And so they can't do anything differently at the level. I'm not saying differently, but at the level that would be expected from me if I were in that room. But what it does is it allows to scale me, because I don't have to be in every room, but I'm still a presence in every room.
That's awesome. And let's get back to it. Hope. Unpack that. Why is that not a good approach? What can you do instead?
Well, let's think about this. I'm going to go all the way back to high school. You get out of high school, you hope you get into the right college. You hope you get the right professors. You hope that you can get into and you enjoy the major that you chose it. Now you move forward. I hope that I can get into this company. I hope that I get a really good manager. I hope that they give me the salary I'm looking for. Mark, at what point do you take accountability and start driving your own life and driving the bus? Because allowing everyone else to drive, it's not going to work, because they don't have the vested interest in you. And I'm sorry to tell the truth to people, but it really is. Companies are here to make a profit, not friends. Friends are optional, right? They're a bonus, I'll say. But you've got to take accountability and ownership for driving your career, driving your company, driving your own life. Because otherwise it'll be like we talked about earlier, where people are just kind of willy-nilly blowing around and they never figure out what their lane is. And life is far too short not to do something that you're absolutely passionate about.
Okay, someone's listening or watching. Okay, this makes sense. And they realize, even if it's just for themselves, it's like, yeah, I'm kind of taking the willy-nilly approach here. Oh, crap. A moment of honesty. This sucks.
Yeah.
How do you start driving your own life if they're listening or watching, to let them know there is a better way to do it? But how do you get started if you realize I'm just across the board? How do you take control? How do you start to take control?
Go back to that whiteboard I talked about earlier. Draw 3 lines. What am I passionate about? What am I really good at? What is the market need that I can bring? And a lot of people they stop at that last because they go, I don't really have anything unique, or the market is too impacted. No, if you bring something unique, which is you, and you find a way to not just create a better mousetrap, but it may be a better mousetrap for that particular segment that you're working with. So maybe it's, you don't work with the large, right? Maybe you work with the Series A, Series B, Series C, and that's okay. But you've got to bring something that, one, shows that you have credibility and you speak their language, you've been there and done it before, or you can help them move forward, is the second piece. And then thirdly, you've got to find your lane where you feel comfortable. Or because if you're trying to go and get comfortable around being uncomfortable, now is not the place to do it. Go somewhere where you bring expertise, you bring validation, and you also bring a mindset that I am here to help. I'm not here to sell.
So when you find your lane, and let's say you just found it and you're driving it, things are getting good, you know what you're doing. How do you stay in that lane and avoid the shiny object syndrome, chasing squirrels, distractions? How do you stay there? Because if you found it, it's easy to say whatever you want to say, 6 months. I found my lane. I'm doing good. This is great. And then, oh, look at that. Look at that. Look at that. How do you stay in your lane?
Set realistic, SMART goals. And I had another mentor that used to tell me, shiny balloons are too easy to blow away when the wind kicks. And the wind's going to kick up. It's going to happen. So set realistic goals and talk to people that, again, have done there before. If you think you're going to kick your business up in 6 months and you're going to go and take over the market, you're foolish, right? It could take a couple of years for it to really kick in. But what you have to have is realistic markers along the way to either say, I am progressing forward, or I'm moving backward, because there's no standing still in business. If you're not seeing that you're getting traction, stop and reevaluate. And I don't mean what you're doing, but the way you're doing it. Maybe you're doing it the way it used to be. Maybe the market has shifted. You've got to do research, and you've also got to do one of the easiest things on the planet, Mark. And that is informational interviews of people that are already doing it. Because you go and ask someone, how did you do this? Fill in the blank. Oh, they're going to blah, 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 and give you everything you want to know. The hard part is getting to them sometimes. That's where you start using your network, right? Because your network will determine your net worth, as we know. So go out and start doing those informational interviews, and don't go buy every new tool, whether it be virtual or AI under the sun. Just because someone says this is great over here. And I tell my clients all the time when they're building out their tool stack, that's great that your friend's company did this. You guys don't do the same thing, and you're not at the same point of maturation. So start with free tools first, try them, test them, validate them, then again, write out what you want to do and what success looks like, and then start buying the tools and the processes and the programs and the platforms as a reverse engineer process to get you to that end state of success.
I love the information interviews. That's the story of my life. When I refocused as far as B2B service offerings, informational interviews were abundant. If someone's not used to doing them, let's start with approaching somebody for an informational interview. What does that approach look like? Because you're asking for someone's time. How do you approach people for informational interviews?
Transparency, first and foremost. And that is, hey, again, I've done my research. I've seen you, blah, 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 fill in the blank. The other thing is, I'm looking to maybe not follow in your footsteps, but I'm looking to do this thing, whatever that thing may be, right? And before I go and jump off the diving board, I want to make sure there's water in the pool. Would you be open to 15, 20 minutes? I don't need an hour. All right. To just bounce this off of you, and please stop. And I've got to say this to people. Stop saying I'd like to pick your brain, because inherently there's only a win for them, not for the person whose brain is being picked. So kill that language and be honest. Say, hey, here's what I'm looking to do. Can I just grab 15 or 20 minutes to talk through some things, not even bounce things, but to talk through, and it won't be more than 2 things. I don't have a laundry list.
Mm-hmm.
Could I just have that piece?
What is an informational? Could you unpack that a little more? Is it, do you ask certain types of questions? What is an informational? Once you get accepted, what does it look like?
The informational interview should be good, bad, and ugly questions. It can't just be unicorns and rainbows. It is, when you've done this, how did it work? If you had a chance to do it again, would you do anything differently? If so, what would you change? Who else would you include in this, in your partner ecosystem? Did you realize that you had the right or the wrong board of directors around you? Also, what's the biggest mistake that happened that you weren't prepared for? That hit you like a Mike Tyson blow, right? And they usually laugh and they go, oh man, let me tell you about this time when. Because what you've learned is, how do you not step in that hole again and break your ankle? Right? And if it goes past that 15 or 20 minutes, always do a time check at 15 minutes. Hey, I asked for 15 minutes. I appreciate it. If you still got time, I'm open to talking. If not, I absolutely appreciate it. You know what that says to them is, you're appreciating their time and you're valuing their time. If they let you go and you wind up talking a half an hour, now that door is generally open to, thank you for today. I really appreciate it. Would it be okay if I reached out periodically? I'm not talking about every week. We don't have to do it every Thursday call. But if I reached out periodically as things come up, would you be open? And most people say, yeah, not a problem at all. Or, hey, could we put something on for 2 months from now? Because I want to make sure that I've gotten some traction and come back to you with questions and or scenarios that are going to be a good use of your time. And people go, yeah, 2 months out. That's realistic. And you know what you've done? You've locked in some time, but at the same time, you didn't ask for time next week.
That's awesome advice. That's one thing I'm really big on, is saying 20 minutes, not a call, because they're going to think, well, God, they want an hour.
Exactly.
So you have all this, you start to collect the information. how do you make the rubber hit the road? Is it a business plan? Is it just go and do a few things, see what works, and stick with a couple of things that do? How does the rubber meet the road after the informational interviews?
The old adage, if you don't plan, you're failing to plan, however it goes, right? But at the end of the day, if you don't have a business plan, you don't have a business. You've just got a really expensive hobby. Look, go, whether it be in your network, go to ChatGPT, whatever it takes, and come up with a business plan. And ChatGPT is great, by the way. The more specific you are, the more details it will give you for your business plan. And then what you also get to do, you get a chance to do is you see right there digitally where your holes are. The categories that it gives you, I'm like, I don't know that. Okay, well, where do I go to get it? Do I need to go talk to, SBA, the Small Business Association? Do I need to go talk to people inside of my network? Do I need to go talk to my mentors? Now it starts to kind of get the engine running. But it's very clear where those soft spots are. And I don't call them holes because it's very easy to shore them up. So what those soft spots are, now you start going through this. Here's the other thing I'll say. And I'm glad we're talking about this business plan piece. It's never too late to start, but there is a too early to start your business. And what I mean is, if you go out there and you're not fully prepared, and I'm not talking about perfection, there is no perfect time, but there's a time where you do feel comfortable where if someone asked you, what's your company do? You better have something you can roll off your tongue right away, right? You got to have your elevator pitch. Who's your audience? Boom, 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 boom. Who are your competitors? What objections? And what are you helping companies to do? If you can't answer those basic questions in less than 2 minutes, you don't have a business yet. Most people start with assets and all that. No. Before you start building assets, who the hell are you building them for? It just doesn't make sense. I mean, a lot of people jump onto Canva or wherever and they start building all these assets, and you're like, who's going to buy this? Have you actually validated that there's a need for this thing?
Oh my gosh. So once you're in your lane, you avoid the distractions, you got the business plan down. I'm really curious. I'll just leave it a decent amount of time and experience under your belt. You've found your lane. The way I'm just going to say is, how do you keep on keeping on when it gets a little tough? I found my lane, it's great, and all of a sudden a hiccup happens, something bad happens. Mentally, how do you keep on keeping on so you stay in your lane and overcome those down cycles?
A couple of ways. One, don't expect perfection, and so there's going to be hiccups. So mentally, you're already prepared for those. The second, and I think for me personally, when that happens, I go back to my foundation and my core. What's my why? Why am I doing this? Whether it be personally, my family, my legacy, my grandchild, whatever it is, my passion that I don't want that fire to go out. And professionally, why am I doing this? Because I know that there is a need for what I've brought. I've had enough conversations. I've talked to enough people, and I see it's out there. And that means I got to go back and kind of rejigger and reevaluate how I'm reaching out. Am I being too salesy? Am I connecting with the right people? And in some cases, and I've seen this with founders, and I made the same mistake early as well. You don't have to take and say yes to every requested meeting. Right?
So how do you say
people
no?
Like, yeah, but I'm networking.
Insulting?
But networking has to be also with success at the end of this. And then the networking becomes part of that reverse engineering process. How is this going to either help me to increase productivity and efficiency or decrease pain for my prospects and my customers? If it doesn't fit into one of those two boxes, I just have to say no to the meeting. Because it's not about me. It's how can I help my customers, my clients, my prospects.
So it sounds like with the business plan, if I hear you right, part of it is once you're getting along, you're doing good, you have the experience under your belt. knowing what to say yes and no to, being self-confident to know this is a fit for me. It's not, because I know my business so well. I know what to say no to. Would that be right?
100%. And it's also how you determine who, what, and why certain companies will be in your partner ecosystem or not in, because you've done the hard work up front. You've got that body of work already now, and you have to be steadfast and not be swayed when the winds blow. Because like I said earlier, wind's going to blow. It's going to happen. Look, as a founder, I've realized after doing this for 7 years now, every day is not unicorns and rainbows. Some days it's really hard. Some days you're like, why am I doing this? Is it getting anywhere? And then out of the blue, something will happen. You'll go, I always equate it, Mark, to golf, which I'm not very good at. All right. But what I mean by this is you can be having a bad day on the front nine. You still got a back nine to go. Or you get that one perfect swing and you hear that ting, and you're like, all right, I'll give it 2 more holes. Because you're constantly searching for that piece, right? The same thing as entrepreneurs. Being an entrepreneur is a lot of things. Easy is not on that list. Not at all. So if you think that you're jumping in and you're going to take off right away, you may, but more than likely you won't. It's going to take time. You've got to build it. You've got to nurture it. You've got to plant the seed. You've got to water it. You've got to nurture it. You've got to fertilize it. But when you get that beautiful crop that shows up, you're like, that's why I did all that. And now when you do it, how do I replicate that? With testimonials, with case studies, with video testimonials, now with assets. Now you've got something that says, I did not only been there and done it successfully, and I've got the ROI and the company that stands with me, behind me, and would be open to share that with you.
That is awesome. And I mean, we have covered so much ground in such a short period of time.
Thank you.
Everything we spoke about is with regards to finding your lane, getting in it, staying in it, the tough times. If someone listening or watching right now is like, okay, I get it. You know, I want to find my lane. I want to do what you said. If you're to say, as far as staying in your lane goes, to get closer and get there to your big idea faster, if you were to say reinforcing something you said, or maybe something we haven't touched on, God, at least do this. At least do this. What would you say?
Do your business plan. Do your research. Make sure you've got good people around you that aren't only going to tell you what you want to hear. And then don't search for perfection, because there is no perfect time. There is no perfect process. There is no perfect anything. And if you remember anything, remember what I'm about to say. When you're out talking to people, stop giving presentations and just start having conversations.
That is beautiful. And if people want to find you online, what's the best place, or places, if case may be, where the best place or places to go?
Thanks for that, Mark. I always say, if you can't find me on social media, you're not really looking. Right? Because so you can find me on LinkedIn at Roderick Jefferson. You can find me on Instagram, Roderick_J_associates. You can find me on Threads and IG at the same. You can find me on YouTube at Roderick Jefferson. If you can't remember my name, you won't be able to find me. Or you can hit me.
Thank you so much.
And I know this is going to be a hard one, Mark. RoderickJefferson.com.
Oh, you got it. Good. You got the .com.
Yes, I did. Yes.
Thank you so much. This has been absolutely awesome. The time just flew by, Roderick. I appreciate you.
Thanks, Mark. I really appreciate it.
And scene. Thank you for tuning into the Idea Climbing radio show today. I really appreciate it. I hope you got something great out of it that you can take into your own life and use to be better in your own life. If you want more great shows like this, go to 216thenet.com. You want to see more of my interviews, radio show, and podcast? Go to markjcartertv.com. Again, that's markjcartertv.com and 216thenet.com.